finding this harder than anticipated. As I was writing out the sketch of Dad's life, I realized that he had already done that. And so thanks to Uncle Roger and Aunt Donna, we now have that record. And some of this is edited, of course, a little bit, but these are Dad's own words. And so we have each chosen a little part to share regarding Dad. These are written by him. One of my earliest memories was the curiosity and excitement of moving to a different house and looking around to see what could be found when living in the Trent, Oregon area. A little while later, our parents were able to purchase a 20-acre farm in the Boring, Kelso area. This was about the time I started school at Boring, Oregon, which is where I spent all 8 grades of elementary school. As I think back, this must have been an exciting purchase. Finally, now the family had their own property after several years of moving from one place to another. Going to school was a big thing in those days. Quite often we rode to school with a family that lived about a mile away. We walked home from school most of the time. The school was a 2-story building with 2 large rooms upstairs, 2 large rooms on the main floor. There were 2 grades in each room. There was a gym or play shed, as it was called at that time, and a ball field next to it. If you could hit the ball over the play shed or hit the ball over part of the field that dropped down to the road, you had a home run. We formed many friendships during those years with classmates, but since moving away after a freshman year in high school, we have lost track of each other. At home on the farm during those years, I had many memories of chore duties with my brothers, such as getting hay down from the hay mow in the barn. During the time of the year when it was dark, Roger would come along and help. His job was to hold the flashlight. He was always so curious as to what was going on that he would flash the light in every direction except to what I was doing. I would get so frustrated at times because I could not see what I was doing. Leroy and I had the morning duties of cleaning the gutter in the barn. We would place a piece of hay halfway, then on one side his was to clean and one side was mine. In the summertime we would haul hay. We would not bale the hay at any time. We not bale the hay at that time. We would cut the field down with a horse and a small tractor-drawn mower with the sickle blades. After the hay had dried, we would rake it into rows and rake it into piles. Then we would bring a trailer or a wagon, put the hay onto the wagon, haul it to the barn. We had a hay fork and track system that would raise the hay up and deliver it to a section in the hay mow, and then someone outside by the trailer would dump the load, and then it would be spread out. One time during this process, Roger, being curious, saw this rope going through the pulley at the end where the horse was pulling on the pulley. As he reached into the pulley to see what was going on, he got his hand caught and damaged his hand. It was not cared for properly at that time of the accident and had to have corrective surgery later on. We did some custom combining with a small combine that was pulled by a small tractor. Later we purchased a Willie Jeep to pull the combine. It was the type of combine that had a place to fill a gunny sack with grain. Then one of us would sew the sack tight to the top and slide it down the chute. Later, someone would come by and pick up all the sacks. There was the usual minor and sometimes not so minor accidents, such as Roger's hand injury, Leroy's broken arm. Other exciting things that we did on the Boring farm was when we were clearing some land. We would dig down under a stump, and then Dad would place sufficient dynamite in the hole to blow the stump out. He would light the fuse that led to the dynamite, and then we would run for cover. We would go far enough or get behind something for protection. Soon the fuse would light the dynamite, and the explosion would result, and pieces of wood would be found scattered everywhere, depending on how much dynamite Dad would put in. I enjoyed the smell around the stump after the explosion. Mom and Dad became Seventh-day Adventists when I was in 7th grade. 2 families came out from Portland to Boring and held meetings. This was a real turning point in our family. I was baptized during the summer of 1948. We would go to camp meeting at Gladstone each Saturday during the 10-day camp meeting each year. I remember that one time some of us went to an evening meeting during the week. We drove from home to Gladstone and back that same night. Dennis was a small baby at the time. It was my duty that night to hold Dennis in my arms all the way to Gladstone and back.
As we got older, different challenges came about. One time, which was the last day of school, Leroy and two other fellows left home without knowing. We were all concerned as to where they went. Later we found out they went to Roseburg to get a job working in the woods. I remember feeling so bad about it that I went off by myself behind the machine shed and cried for a long time. Another time, Melvin left home without anyone knowing as he was interested in attending Laurelwood Academy. He was gone one day and one night. I remember every fall, before we moved to Milton Freewater, that ministers and education people would come to visit Mom and Dad to see if they could get us to go to church school. During my year as a freshman at Sandy High School, I played on the junior varsity for football, basketball, and baseball. When there was a game later after school, there was some free time. I would walk uptown with my friends and we would go to the cafe. They had some pinball machines there and play on them. Somehow word got to some people in our church that I was doing something that I should not be doing. These people talked to my dad, and Dad talked to me. It was instances like this that may have led and made an impression on Mom and Dad in their decision to move to Milton Freewater, so we could attend Christian schools. At the end of my freshman year, I was elected vice president of the sophomore class for the next year. I was proud of the fact that the class voted that honor to me, but I did not want to tell anyone that we were moving and I would not be back. I knew that I would probably never see these people again. All that summer, we were all excited about the move and the new school we would be going to. We moved in August of 1948. Life was a lot different on the 100-acre farm in Milton Freewater, Oregon. Farming was on a bigger scale. Dad was able to stay home and work on the farm. Some of us older boys were able to do some work for the other farmers to make some money. There were still many accidents, but one incident that happened could have been a major disaster. We were moving a boom that was used for stacking hay. We failed to lower the boom to the move position, and when going under the power lines, it hit a transformer. Melvin was driving the tractor, which was pulling the boom, and I was taking care of the gate, which was a wire fence. When the boom struck the transformer, there was an enormous noise from the transformer. Fortunately, I was not holding the gate. I noticed the wire was burning the grass. I thought to myself how strange that was. Then I realized that the whole fence was hot due to electricity. We were very fortunate. No one was hurt.
During those years, I met Shirley Rimbold, who lived a few miles from us, and we went to the same church. We were married June 6, 1954, during the summer between my junior and senior year at Walla Walla College. I remember the day I was to start college, that I was in the kitchen at home and was talking to my mother and was undecided as to what I should pursue in college. She said without hesitation that I should take business. So that is what I did. Soon after Shirley and I got married, I thought about being an optometrist. During my senior year, I took a number of science subjects to prepare for the applying to school in Forest Grove, Oregon. After graduation, I decided to continue in business. I have never regretted taking the science subjects, as they were very helpful in the work that I was to be later involved in. Our first son, Marlon, was born March 21, 1955, shortly after I graduated from college. Shortly before I graduated from college. My first position after school was a salesman for Loma Foods. We lived in Spokane, Washington. I did not care for this type of work, as I was a bashful kid off the farm. This was not a popular product to sell in some of the out-of-the-way places, and I could be intimidated very easily. During the spring of 19 1956, the personnel manager from the White Memorial Hospital came to Spokane and interviewed me for a position at the White Memorial Hospital. I accepted and we moved to Los Angeles, California. This was a very good experience for me, and I learned many things about the hospital business and taking responsibility, as for a time I was on duty in the evening and had to make important decisions along with the admitting nurse. Shirley worked part-time in the information booth at the hospital. By this time, our second son, Lauren, was born. On November 14, 1956, I got acquainted with a fellow in our church that was a business manager for a group of physicians. I began to look into this and place my name with the alumni office at Loma Linda University. Soon after that, I was contacted by the alumni office, and they told me of 2 positions that were available in Washington State. We accepted the one in Seattle, and this became our home for 16 and a half years. Terry, our third son, was born October 17, 1958, 2 weeks after we moved to Seattle. Then, June 24, 1960, Clinton, our fourth little bundle of joy, arrived at our house. Clinton did his best to try to keep up with his 3 older brothers. Our first home in Seattle was in Lake City, a brick house where we lived for about a year. We then purchased a house on 158th Street and lived there until 1963, when we purchased a lot on Queen Anne Hill from a member of our church. The lot was wooded and on the side of a hill. It cost more money to prepare the lot than the actual lot cost. We built a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house. We sold it when we moved to Texas. Every so often we go back with the boys and reminisce. This was a most exciting time of our lives in Seattle, as this was the base for new friends and our children's growing up years. As our family of 4 boys was growing, we had opportunity to send them to my dad and mother's place in the Sumner. This was a great experience for them, as it got them out of the house, out of the city, when school was out, and gave them something to do. We will always have great gratitude for Dad and Mom to let us do this. There were some accidents on the farm, and some to our boys. Lauren had the most severe accident, which involved falling off a tractor. I think I got pushed, and being run over by a hay conditioner. He had about 90 stitches in his head. When I saw him for the first time in the hospital, his head was completely covered with bandages except for his eyes, nose, and mouth.
As our family looks back on those years, it seems we always think about the spring vacations that we had each year. Over the years, we went to all the ski areas in the Northwest and many in California. We also enjoyed all the sport and music activities the boys were involved in. It was also during these years that Shirley went back to school and became a licensed practical nurse and worked at the University Hospital in Seattle. In 1975, we made a big move in our lives as we left the Seattle area and our friends to go to Rusk, Texas, where I became administrator for the Rusk Memorial Hospital. We talked Roger into moving there from Montana as we needed more physicians. So in 1975, he and Carol moved with their family to Rusk. After we were in Rusk, a little less than 2 years, I decided to go back to school. So moved to Westaco, Texas, since Terry and Clinton were going to the academy there. I was going to go to the university there and work part-time. The part-time work, which was literature evangelism. Terry and I had done some summer literature evangelism work, and it worked out very well to help with the tuition. And that had an influence on Dad, and so that was his part-time work. Part-time work turned out to occupy all my time. 1 month, he was the top salesperson for the union. During that time, we got a call to take a position with Adventist Living Centers as an administrator in long-term care. We moved to Wisconsin and were soon transferred to a large 205-bed facility in Marshfield. We were there for 5 years and then went into education administration at Modesto, California for 9 years, and then to Monterey Bay Academy as business manager. I retired there from full-time denominational work, and we moved to Bowdoin, North Dakota. We are retired, but are also self-employed. We do church auditing for conferences, which gives us an opportunity to travel, and I also do miscellaneous carpentry jobs in the area. And that's where his story, what he wrote, ended. He also was called back into business manager work at Indiana Academy and Wisconsin Academy, plus doing lots of traveling through the winters, visiting family. There's, as we've mentioned, Dad liked music. He tried different instruments himself, but just didn't quite get the hang of it. And when he would sing, not always would he stay on tune. But there was one song that he liked and could sing, and even sang special music. And so the four of us are going to sing that song. There's a wideness in God's mercy. We're going to put the words on the screen, and Rick, I'll need this. There it goes. Okay. And if you know the song, we invite you to sing along.
We encourage you to sing along.
And we will stay in tune just like Dad did. You sure you want me to have a mic?
You don't have the words? Okay, we'll get one too. There's a wideness in God's mercy, like the wideness of the sea. There's a kindness in God's justice, which is more than liberty. He is calling, come to me, Lord, I gladly follow thee. For the love of God is broader than the measures of the mind, and the heart of the eternal is most wonderfully kind. He is calling, come to me, Lord, I gladly follow thee. Yeah,
Is this one on? Thank you. Dad's life was centered around doing things with us kids. There was a time when we were at the house in 301 Ray Street. And it was 3 years after we had moved in. I was in the back part of the utility room, and I was in trouble for something. I'm not sure what it was. Dad was talking to me, and I was kind of upset, and so I slammed the door and went around through the kitchen, through the dining room, upstairs, and lo and behold, my dad followed me. My dad did not yell at me. He just pulled me aside, and I'll never forget this. He told me, Marlon, your mother and I live for you boys. That time, as a 13-year-old who thinks he knows everything, hit me really hard. And from then on, I tried to do my best not to disappoint my dad. One of the things that he loved to do with his boys was to do adventures, bicycle trips, water skiing, snow skiing, and we will tell you some of those stories. But we would like to share with you at least one story that we actually have on video. And it goes back a long time ago to when I was 10 and Clint was 5. It's a bicycle trip. We actually had to help Clint on the bike to ride. And Dad took the 4 of us on a bicycle trip camping. And Mom stayed at home. And we found out later that this is exactly what she wanted, was to get the boys out of the house so she could rest. We will try to give some commentary on this.
The video that we have is one where it was recorded with some of the family, Uncle Bill, Aunt Doreen, Marlon, Tanya, making some comments, and Dad. And so you hear Dad's voice, and so that's the background commentary.
Okay, this is our bicycle trip.
What year was this?
Clint was 5 years old. This was 1970. 1965. It's Marlon. Here's Lauren coming up. He's got 2 sleeping bags.
How much did that bicycle cost, Bob?
That was big money.
There's
Yeah,
Terry.
you buy
Terry.
five of them.
I see he's got the lunch there.
There comes Clint.
He didn't have to carry anything because all he could just barely get on.
There we is.
Like your head, Bob.
Yeah.
So where were you
my
taking
4
off?
sons.
And we were headed for the ferry, Kingston Ferry.
And how many miles?
It's about 10 miles to the ferry.
You're taking pictures of them?
What time of year was this?
This was probably July or August because it didn't rain.
Thank goodness.
Oh yeah, we had a breakdown already.
Terry's
So
soon
how
making
far,
some
how
back
long
and
were you
forth.
going to be gone, Bob,
Yeah,
on this
four
trip?
nights.
How many miles
This is a
did it cover?
Thursday. About 10 miles to the first ferry. Then we got the ferry and we just rested across the bay.
How old was Marlon then?
Daddy, where are you?
I was 10.
You look the oldest.
Okay, now
you
we're-
look like the oldest.
We're just
Daddy?
getting ready to get on the
That's
ferry.
you. That's you, Dad.
Yeah.
And
Daddy, do you have glasses?
You know, watch a sequence coming up here pretty soon.
pretty soon Lauren,
This is pretty funny.
one of them finds something. He's always snooping around and finds something.
Who?
Clinton.
And fixing the other.
There he is.
He found a dime.
Dad, she looks funny.
That was Sean's that he said.
Okay, the ferry's coming in.
That doesn't look like a fairy to me.
I think it does.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind, Marlon?
I don't remember.
There, when When
Okay, I
did
guess
you
we're
ever
just
get
getting ready to take off
glasses
here.
Actually, this is summertime, so I may have been 11. The Clinton's 5.
Oh, look at that.
Hi, Grandpa.
Well, the first time Raper's real rest here.
You know, Clinton asks these things. It's carrying.
Finding dimes and clovers.
Yeah, why would he think to look down in there?
That brought a pop or something, wasn't it? It's tearing.
Who's jumping up and down?
Okay, now this is, we didn't go very far from here to find that first camp, did we?
Right, no, it was just a little way.
Oh, no, we had to go, we had to go quite a way. This is our first lunch. This is the lunch we took from home. The only lunch we took from home.
You took 4 boys and you didn't have enough food, right?
Just wheeling out across the traffic, they're not looking anywhere.
Grandpa, where are you?
Is that my bike?
That was your bike.
Hey.
I think we Raper rested.
Hi, Dad.
Like I say, we did a lot of resting, a lot of eating on this trip.
Well, it's kind of hard to take pictures while you're riding.
We just had it set on time.
Dad, when
Oh,
did you
Lord's
ever
Day,
get to
oh.
have your glasses on?
That was the seventh.
Okay, this is the camp that we
That was our first night.
first night in. Where that guy said this is
Kids still have all kinds of energy. and
When you
they're
say that,
tired,
yeah, they drove twice as far as I did.
They're back and forth up and down waiting for Dad.
That's Dad.
Yeah, Kitsap Memorial State Park. And the ranger, he said, that's the wettest water you kids have ever seen.
Years old.
Three sleeping bags.
You know who
Where's
that-
the food?
That is like that guy on television.
Yeah, box it. Yeah, I had it back
Fred
on my
McMurray. That's Fred McMurray. My first.
Son. Which put this on a title. Fred McMurray and My Four Sons.
Oh, this is a long hill. Oh, man. And you don't realize hills and the cars, so you don't have a trip like that. The cars come zoom, zoom. What happened?
Sun
Yeah, that
keeps
took
shining.
us a long time to get up that hill.
I want to know what you said to Lauren if you couldn't
That's
read
the
it.
sun.
You need Clinton?
No, Lauren.
Oh, Lauren is doing well.
Oh, Lauren did well.
Yeah.
Well, Clinton got his pants caught.
Yeah, we had
Yeah, we had a little trouble going down a big hill. Clint got his pants caught in the chain, so Dad had to catch up and pull him on.
had to grab his steering wheel and slow him down.
How old was Clinton?
5
Five.
years. Okay,
Oh,
there
this
it
is the great
Oh,
sequence.
boy. Yeah, watch this.
Watch Lauren.
Which one's Lauren?
The back. Watch him.
Ronnie and Clinton. She just smiled. Oh, yeah.
That's what the seeds on Clinton's head.
He was waiting for.
Yeah, they're supposed to act like they're sick.
Oh,
We're safe before you
Yeah, we've moved to another location.
Scene 7.
Taste for taste.
yeah.